Welcome. It is 5 o'clock on Tuesday evening, August 15th, 2023. This is a special session of the City of Cape Girardeau City Council. We will begin with the call to order and roll call vote. We lost our clerk. Can I go ahead and, there she is. Sorry, Ms. Conrad, I started before I realized you weren't back yet. My apologies. Can we get the roll call vote, please? Mr. Bliss?
Here.
Mr. Guard? Absent. Mr. Presson?
Here.
Ms. Randle?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Ms. Truxel?
Here. And Mayor Kinder's here as well. Council, we have an agenda before us. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Presson, Mr. Bliss, any discussion? All those in favor then of adopting the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, agenda carries. All right, so tonight we have one issue on the agenda, and that is a public hearing to consider a petition for the formation of the RCC Community Improvement District. I will now open that public hearing, at which point we now will take time to hear from members of the audience. We like to ask people to limit their comments or questions to 3 minutes. If the members of the RCC would like to start, that would be great.
Thank you, Mayor, very much. Members of the council, city staff, thank you very much for your time this evening, for calling a special meeting to hear this matter. We thank you very much for your time and attention with respect to that. We do have a presentation that it looks like Gail is pulling up for us right now. So I'll draw your, thank you, Gail. Appreciate it. Our agenda, we have a fairly short presentation, but it's been a couple of months since TIF commissions. We wanted to make sure we went through, introduced our team, talked about the vision for the project again a little bit, made sure we kind of reset on what it is that we have from a vision standpoint for the project. So we'd like to do some introductions, talk about our project team and the vision we have for the project, review the CID matter that you have before you this evening, and then talk about next steps. My name is John Hanson with IRR Corporate and Public Finance. We are public finance consultants to RCC, the owners and developers of the mall. And then joined by me in just a moment is Lucas Haley, a member of the ownership team as well. We'll run through our agenda. As I said, I'll turn things over to Lucas, and then I'll come back and talk specifically about the CID petition, some of the particulars, how it impacts the plan of finance for the project. Lucas?
Thanks, John. Good evening. Want to take a minute. Again, my name is Lucas Haley. I want to introduce the group, the ownership group and the developer of River City Center. And so it's made up of a group of individuals who are local to Cape and Southeast Missouri. We all grew up here. We've spent our entire lives, decades, going to the mall and to the property. So it's something that we're very familiar with. First time that this property has been known locally since the early 1980s, since right after it was built. So, 40 plus years. We purchased the property in August of 2021 at a well-publicized auction. The newspaper had a lot of articles about it. And so once we purchased it, we pretty quickly knew we can't leave this property in the same state that it is now, right? It will not self-sustain on the path that it's on. It was a quickly declining asset. And so made the decision, obviously it has to be redeveloped. There are multiple options on the table for what path to take on that redevelopment. The one that has the largest impact for the community and is most beneficial for the community is retail development. It drives sales tax revenue and it drives property tax. It pulls traffic into Cape. So we quickly decided that we wanted to try to keep this as a retail center, if at all possible. And so we put together a team in order to be able to do that, to help us out. And so that team consists of ourselves, obviously, Pilot Construction Solutions. Rick Martin is here this evening and has been an integral part of pulling together on the construction side and keeping us up to speed on what the requirements look like. We have Pace Properties out of St. Louis. They are both a managing and leasing consultant with us. They have helped us to attract national tenants to the property. Quite honestly, we have more interest in this phase one of the project than we can handle right now. We have more large national retailers that want to be here than we have space to put them in the current configuration. So Pace has been a huge part of the process. We have IRR, John Hansen, helping us on the incentive side and the financial modeling side to understand what it takes to make this project work. And then we also have Lawrence Group. They are architects and engineers out of St. Louis, and they have done projects nationwide, are experienced in mall projects in particular, when West County Mall in St. Louis is one of the main projects that they've worked on. The most recent addition to our team is Robinson Construction. They are based in Perryville. I think most of you are probably familiar with them. Again, a local group with a nationwide reach, but they have already hit the ground running and helping us understand, what it's going to take to make this project a reality on the construction side. I want to emphasize the work that we put into place behind the scenes before we came to the city in order to ask for the incentives and to understand what this project takes to make it happen. And so we've spent the last 2 years since we purchased the property envisioning a redevelopment and, most importantly, attracting the tenants to be here, right? We didn't want to do if you build it, they will come. It's they want to be here and we need to build it for them. So we have taken that approach. We have a lineup of tenants that are ready to come. They wanted to be here a year ago, quite frankly, and we are every day getting more attention from tenants, and I think that will only continue as the project actually starts to take shape and be constructed. Let's talk a little bit about our vision for this property and the Cape market. So I think we can probably all agree that Cape has been a regional retail destination for decades. It draws from everywhere in the Southeast Missouri area, the tri-state area on top of that. And one of the primary things, in addition to the hospital and the university, are the retail spaces that we have in our offerings. We have watched that slip away in some of those outer areas to other towns who have increased their retail offerings and, have redeveloped their malls or have more national tenant options, some of which we are missing out on. Some of these tenants have wanted to be here for a while and just have not found the space to make that happen. We view this property as a flagship property for the city. It's, you know, it's very large, 65 acres, 500,000 square feet of leasable square footage. It is a, you know, and our vision is flagship property in the center of town. And we've all watched it become sort of an eyesore and a has-been type property over the last 20 years. If you drive by it now, obviously, you know, you can pretty quickly see how much of it is vacant and needs to be significantly redone in order to breathe new life into it. Again, reiterating, we have the tenants that want to be here. They are ready to come to this space. We need to figure out how to make that happen. So those tenants, once they arrive and are in the space, you know, we're looking at this property itself, and that's what we're talking about and the focus of tonight is. But I think we would be remiss not to think about the impacts that this will have on the surrounding properties and on the community. So when people come just to shop at this property, they're not going to just stay on this property, right? They're going to eat in the surrounding restaurants, shop in the surrounding stores, spend more time in Cape, and more money in Cape, most importantly. And so it certainly is a catalyst for the outlying areas and all through town. You say, okay, well, this all sounds great. The tenants want to be here. We've got the property. Everything, you know, sounds like it's going to be good. Well, why aren't we doing this already? And so our challenges are where we're really running into and why we're here tonight. So primary challenges, construction cost, right? We've seen construction costs go up 25 to 50% over the last couple of years. You know, obviously inflation rates, lead times, you know, we're looking at up to 30 to 40 weeks on different types of electrical equipment in order to order that until it arrives. You know, the better part of 6 to 9 months to get those, get that equipment here. So construction cost, interest rates have doubled. I think anybody with a home mortgage knows that. We've gone from around 3% to around 8% on a lot of commercial sized deals. And so obviously that has a dramatic impact on the profitability of a project and the lease rates. I'm sorry, on the interest rates. The next challenge is lease rates. National tenant retailers tell you what they are willing to pay based on what they're paying in other markets. And it is a take it or leave it approach. There's not a lot of room for negotiation. And those rates have not kept up with construction cost and inflation cost over the last few years. Another challenge is looking at, if we don't do this, what happens to this property, right? And so we're not looking at an option where we just keep the status quo and that's somehow okay or good for the city. Just as a couple examples, sales tax revenue from the property declined 20% in 2022 alone in 1 year. Property tax revenue from the mall that's paid to the city, county, and taxing districts declined almost 50% since 2018. So over the last 4 to 5 years, 50% drop. That will certainly continue. We have tenants that have already said they're not going to stay in the property as it is. They will leave, and several of those have indicated they are leaving the market entirely. So if we don't complete a redevelopment, so that decline will continue. There's not a sort of flat lining in the near future. That's a list of challenges. What are the benefits to this, to doing this redevelopment, if we are able to pull the tenants in and pull an incentive package together and make this project come to fruition? What are we looking at in overall benefits? We're looking at a $107 million construction project. We're looking at $80 million in new tax revenue over the next 30 years that'll go to local jurisdictions. We're looking at 700 permanent jobs being retained and added at the property. By comparison, the university has around 1,100 jobs. So we're talking about a significant employer on one property in this area. Also benefits, city and county are not placing guarantees on any of the incentives that we're asking for, right? The city is not actually signing their name on to any sales proceeds or any tax proceeds to go to us directly. If we create this project, we generate the sales tax revenue and the property tax revenue, then we get to share in that benefit along with the city. The city is not writing us a check out of its current funding. We're also looking at a revitalized area, you know, a catalyst for redevelopment on this property and the surrounding areas. We think that'll obviously encourage job growth, which encourages housing growth, property tax, sales tax revenue. You know, the indirect benefits for the city are very sizable in addition to the property itself. Just kind of a quick preview of the design and the things that we've been working on. This is what we've been showing to tenants on exterior. What you're looking at is the east wing of the mall. So on the left side of this slide, that's the Macy's right now and going in towards the main entrance. Show a couple of these options. So we're looking at essentially phase one is taking that east wing of the mall, turning it inside out, putting exterior store entrances, new signage all the way along the front. Obviously, you know, new stone packages, new colors, and entirely new design. As recently as 2 weeks ago, we were sorting through samples of different stone and design to put up on the front of the building. So looking at it, an entirely new feel, look to the property, new entrances, new landscaping, parking lot upgrades, altered traffic flow, and out parcel development around to where you don't drive up to something that looks like a Soviet bunker, to be quite honest, just a large wall of concrete. So we have been working with Lauren's group on these, and we're very excited about what we think this is going to look like. A few more examples. Again, $100+ million project. We're looking at 500,000 square feet of retail space to be renovated. Our vision for this is to make this property the flagship of this town again, to make Cape maintain and grow its status as a retail center in our area and not allow that slippage to continue to other towns. We think this will be a large catalyst for the area. You see our vision for the project. You see who we are, what we're bringing to the table, what we want to do here, and some of the challenges. Our number one challenge is financial feasibility for the project. To be very straightforward, we cannot do this project without an incentive package. And I think that we've made that clear. I hope that we have. We want to do this project. We think this project will have a huge impact for the area. We think the benefits to the city much outweigh the costs and the objections to an incentive package. And we're asking for your support to help us make this happen. I'm going to turn it over to John Hanson to go through a few details on the actual CID part itself that we're here tonight for. Thank you.
Since the subject of tonight's hearing is the CID, the remainder of our comments here will focus on the information that was presented in the CID petition, which was filed on July 21st. The following contains the boundary map that's proposed for the CID. It's essentially the outer boundary of what we all consider West Park Mall, approximately 65 acres. RCC owns both the majority of the parcels and the assessed value within the boundary of the proposed CID. The CID is one of several important financing components for the redevelopment of the mall. We'll focus just on the CID this evening. It's approximately 17% of the total costs to be reimbursed by the CID, or approximately $18 million. As you all know, the CID is ultimately formed by a decision, a vote of the City Council. We filed that petition on July 21st. The city made the necessary public notices for this public hearing. The CID has two primary financing components. Number one, a new CID sales tax of 1.0%. That will be a new tax that's imposed on all taxable goods transactions within the CID district. Second is a CID special assessment of $2 per building square foot. CID funds are specified in state statutes as to what they can be used for. We have a blight finding with respect to the overall, a blight study with respect to the overall CID, ultimately for City Council to make a finding on. CID funds can be used for things such as infrastructure improvement, but also importantly for blight remediation, which would likely be the primary use for the CID funds. The CID sales tax of 1% has a maximum term of 27 years, or if bonds pay off and all reimbursable redevelopment project costs are paid prior to that, then the CID could close sooner, but it has a maximum term of 27 years. Same with the CID special assessment of $2 per square foot. That special assessment appears on the property owner's tax bill as a special line item. CID special assessment right on their standard property tax bill is paid on an annual basis. It also has a maximum term of 27 years. As Lucas described, without the mall redevelopment and this important tool for the CID, the future of the mall is simply uncertain. Property tax growth, as we've seen declines in recent years, is likely to continue to go down. Taxable sales are likely to continue to decline without reinvestment, a 19% decline alone in 2022. And job creation and retention also is unlikely. This is a graphical representation of the benefits that Lucas already talked about. I won't go over those again, but again, the topic tonight is the CID public hearing. We very much are thankful for you all being here tonight on a Tuesday evening. CID is just one of the tools that we'll be coming back and talking with all the tools and talking about the other components of the financing mechanism over the coming weeks. We look forward to doing that. We respectfully request your support of the CID. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now entertain questions or comments from the audience. If you would, please come to the podium and state your name. And if we could, please specifically target the CID, the purpose of the public hearing tonight.
Sounds good,
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. My name is Dennis Fonick, 1903 Sherwood Drive, Cape Girardeau, Missouri. I'm retired. And I had sent a letter to the council back in July. I just want to pass these out again for reference right here.
Thank you.
Reference the second page of that when we're talking. But as we talked tonight, it is specifically the CID, but it's also been said, this is only one of the several steps they're talking about taking here for the whole project. And one of the big things is that my letter there points out several things. And one of the biggest things is the scale of the project. Should this project be supported? Yes. Will it improve Cape, what they're talking about? Yes. Is it going to be a great project? Is it something that needs to happen? Yes. But the question is should it be this level of support that is so much tax support that it really becomes more of a tax deal than a financial deal? Like I said, the CID is $57 million. On the second sheet right here outlines this is from their performance, and the CID is $57 million, but they come down to the much lower $18 million amount by taking the present value of that at 6%. And basically, I'm an engineer. So if you take the present value of something, you're assuming that the 6% inflation for those whole 27 years. If it's 3% inflation or 4% inflation, that number is a lot higher. 6% is a pretty aggressive number to assume for 27 years of that. So first you take the $57 million, you discount it for the next present value, and then you discount it again for how much you can finance that present value for. So that's the numbers we're talking about here. They're talking about is the 18 million, not the $57 million of actual tax credits that are coming through the CID. And so that's part of the whole issue is that when we take a look at the total project, as we had said, it's not just the CID, as they mentioned, it's also the TIF and the TID and basically 5 different projects. When you add all of those projects up, there was just an article in the paper a little while ago where they talked about the 49 million. But the 49 million comes from taking $145 million of tax credits that come over the 27 years, which is discounted at use 6%, and they knock it down to $65 million for present value at 6%. And then they take a financing value all the way down to 49 million. So when we talk about transparency, that 49 million is not what the tax deal is. The tax deal, the SID deal we're talking about is the top line up there, 145 million. In every other project we've ever done in Cape, everything we've always done with the city over the years, we never discounted the paybacks, whether it took 10 years or 20 years or 15 years to pay back on a joint drop project. It always was done on total dollars. And the big thing is it wasn't, we weren't coming back and saying, hey, I need to double the amount of money because I'm going to make up a present value of 6%. So I deserve more money on that side of it. So that's the biggest thing there is that what is the real facts on it? The fact is $148 million for 27 years on the SID and 30 years on one of the other portions of it, 6% calculations. And then the other side of it is that 11% returns are the numbers that they're using in their performance for return to a developer. Well, over the years with being able to work with Bob Drury and Charles Drury and stuff over the year, we invested lots and lots of money. But nobody ever made 11% here in Cape Girardeau, but because it's just not the size of a project that you're going to have. So thank you very much, Mayor. Appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Volink. Mr. Hanson, I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind addressing, he's stating that the request is for $148 million, and I'm not aware that that's the case, but if you could clarify that.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the opportunity to make that clarification. The cost-benefit analysis for the TIF, which includes the projections on the CID as well, is quite clear with respect to the amount of money that's estimated to be generated on a projected basis for the project. However, it is appropriate to talk about net numbers because our investment in the project is on a net basis. We don't include the interest that we're going to pay to private lenders and to equity providers into the project, into the budget. Therefore, likewise, it's appropriate to talk about the net amount of the CID or the TIF or the TDD. That's a true apples to apples comparison. Also, there was a statement made about the 6% somehow being an indication of an inflation rate to discount the revenues. That's just not true. That 6% is it's a cost of capital. And we think that's actually quite low and quite conservative in today's day and age with interest rates as high as they are.
Well, I actually was asking even more basic question than what you just answered.
Yes.
Because I guess you're bringing private money into this project.
That's right.
That-
Significant private dollars.
Yeah.
Yes. Over 50% of the project is coming from private dollars. So we're asking for a sum total of $49 million. That's the TIF, TDD, and CID. The CID alone is $18 million. And a big portion of that $18 million is from CID special assessments, which is just an assessment on ourselves. No one else pays that. The property owners pay that assessment.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does someone else from the audience wish to speak?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm Kevin Whitfield with Drury Southwest. The Community Improvement District must meet the same threshold for blight, which consists of insanitary or unsafe conditions, deterioration of site improvements, existence of conditions which endanger life or property, or are a menace to public health, safety, or welfare. West Park Mall is not blighted. It may need some improvement, and these gentlemen are proposing a significant improvement. However, the city doesn't have to participate to the level that it's asked. And the only studies that have been done to date are the feasibility studies, and the cost justifications are ones that they paid for and presented to you as their opinion of how it could go. So bonding, make this a performance-based project, pay as you go. You don't have to float the entire amount of bonds up front. Do not allocate all risk to the city on a front-end payout, and not as a bonded incentive shifting risk onto the payment of bonds. Do not risk the city's credit rating for the next 23 years. I want to read you a quote from Independence, Missouri, where the city did a SID district and they had to pony up and pay for some of the bonds because the sales projections did not pan out the way they thought. The bonds were not guaranteed by the City of Independence through taxing authority as with general obligation bonds. However, the council believed it to be absolutely necessary to appropriate funds to bridge any shortfalls to ensure the city's strong financial credit. That's from 2004, Bass Pro Project from Robert Heacock, Independence, Missouri City Manager. The city paid $3.5 million to meet debt coverage because the sales projections on a Bass Pro Shop didn't meet the sales obligations that were put out there on the front end. The CID is not a standalone. This is one of 5 incentives being asked for on this project. Of these, the CID might be the most appropriate, however, not in combination with the other 4 and not to this level. And you're being asked tonight to review and think about millions of dollars in incentives, but none of you have one idea of one tenant that's going in here. And I wanted to bring an article from the Southeast Missourian from October 23rd, 2016, where the Town Plaza Community Improvement District failed to meet its sales projections. And the city and the county both had to pay up to the tune of $167,000 to the city, from the city, and $27,000 from the county in order to meet the obligation of the sales objectives that were initially set out. So take this a stage at a time. Take your time, wait for the other independent study, and don't move so fast. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for your time. Does anyone else from the audience wish to comment?
Good evening. I'm John McGowan. Know most of you. Thank you for your time and for having a special session on this. I know that you're trying to keep it to a CID focus only, but as they pointed out, this is a multi-pronged tax incentive for this development. So I'm not sure how you're going to break these up, or if the project will move forward if the CID is improved and the TIF isn't, or one of the other items. So I would ask for clarification on that.
Well, maybe I can clarify. I just meant tonight's public hearing
You're right.
is focused on it.
But it's hard to talk about one without talking about the others. And while the other gentlemen were much more eloquent, I will keep my comments brief. I believe that the CID is the most appropriate and the only one that the council should honestly consider in this redevelopment project, because the return on the investment for the others isn't worth the tax funds going into it or sacrificing the revenue to the city, especially given as tight as you all know the budget is, and the needs that the city has, both from staffing as well as to the community as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Someone else wish to speak?
How you doing? Jason Coulter. Most of you know me. Born and raised Cape Girardeau. I'm very supportive of this project. I want to see it happen, but I want to see it happen fiscally responsibly. We've done a SID in town. You know, it was the first one we had ever done. We're about ready to finish it up on South Kings Highway. It's going to take us, best case scenario, 27 years to recapture our cost. We set it up to where we did not want to take advantage of city funds. We didn't want to take advantage of anybody. We just wanted to redevelop a building and bring it up to what it needed to be, because it hadn't been touched for 40 or 50 years. So I think while it might be legal to get approval on all these incentives, you know, I'm not patting my pocket by one penny for the projects that we're doing. And so I think that utilizing city resources and public resources are wonderful ways to bring properties back to life and revitalize them. And any of you that know me, I've been doing this since I was 18 years old. I think the ball is necessary to revitalize it. You got some great guys here that, you know, I know them. They may not be happy that I'm standing up here like I am, but I want to see the project be successful. But no one should get rich off of doing a project in on the backs of the citizens of Cape Girardeau without tremendous long-term skin in the game. And so that's just as I'm hearing a lot of things about it in the community. No one doesn't want the project to happen. It's that we have an obligation as residents and leaders in our city to make good fiscal decisions that are going to not negatively impact our kids. And unfortunately, some of the things I've heard from people I'm not going to mention names with was, well, it's legal. Well, it's not our problem. Well, that's city council's problem. Well, I've never been an I and a me. It should be a we. And we're all tasked with making Cape Girardeau a better place to live, but we need to do it in a fiscally responsible way, that somebody's not paying for our mistakes the way that I've had to clean up. I guess I didn't have to, but our companies have cleaned up a lot of messes that shouldn't have been messes 30 years ago. And so that's really all I've got to say about it, but I wish you all well in your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak?
Michelle Latham, 2135 Rampart Street here in Cape. My question is, what parameters or what thresholds does the city have in place in terms of, for lack of a better way of saying it, making this deal? So if the city decides that we're going to support this, what are the prerequisites or requisites that we have in place for the development folks that are here tonight? So if you're able to maybe elaborate on that or explain that a little bit, I'd like to know a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Thank you. We can certainly address that. Dr. Haskin or Mr. Pulley, if you'd like to just talk about general, city response or how we're dealing right now with this project or the agreement.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
Okay, currently the city staff and it probably is in negotiations with the developers. We've been working with them for the past 2 months regarding the terms of the negotiations, the development agreement. Both sides have been working diligently together to get the best thing for the city of Cape. We are still working on that. Once we come to agreement, if there is one, we will release it.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wishing to come forward? No? Oh, I'm sorry.
My name is Christina Limer, and I live in Cape. And I'm speaking because I don't see how bringing businesses in here to sell us more stuff is going to make us a better place to live. And at the highest tax rate, we already have one of the highest tax rates in the state. And according to their cost-benefit study, some of these taxes will all add up together, and it will be a tax rate as high as Kansas City and St. Louis, sales tax rate. So that's on all of us to pay for them to make a profit. So I think really they should go another direction and figure out how to make the property they bought make a profit for them. And then I have another concern, and that is about these CIDs. So you are giving individual people, unelected people, taxing authority over us. No representation. Think, that's kind of doesn't tend to sit real well in this country when you think about it. And this is a tax on all of us. If we need to buy something there, if we can buy something someplace else that doesn't have that tax rate, fine. But there are a lot of these CIDs. And somebody mentioned Town Plaza. And I've wondered about Town Plaza because it makes me wonder what requirement do they have to keep this up over 27 years? Town Plaza is ratty looking. So, and then when they talk about bringing jobs, their own blight study says that Cape has had full employment, Cape County, for a long time. That's why you can't find city workers. That's why, people already own business here can't find clerks, but they're going to find 700. So I don't see this as a viable project. So, and they've owned the property for 2 years. Have they made any improvements? Looking at their cost benefit study at the assessed value, their projected assessed value in 2024 doesn't look like they've made much any improvement because it's not much higher than it was in 2022. And citing declining sales in 2022, we're still coming out of a pandemic in 2022. So I have a problem looking at how, and they've said themselves, without you investing everything that you can possibly throw at them in terms of incentives, this is not a viable project. So I'm just going to stop right there and say, I think both for philosophical and public benefit reasons and financial reasons, this project should not go with your support.
Thank you, Ms. Limer. Anyone else? Council, questions, comments, discussion? None right now? I'm sorry? No. Mr. Pulley, if you wouldn't mind, talk to us. There were several questions raised just about the process. And you talked about it briefly when we discussed the TIF for this project and any other. Can you talk to us in terms of just how the city deals with the tax receipt under these kinds of incentives, and then how that money is processed to the developer and what that money has to be used for and in the accounting on the city side?
Thank you, Mayor. It depends on if it's a TIF, CID, TDD. So we'll first talk about the TIF. The TIF money is done by a lot of developers, right? It's a standard amount, and it's set by the redevelopment agreement. So once the project is moving forward and finished, the developers will send in receipts, spreadsheets of what they spent, just like in this project. They would, if it is approved, they will send in what they have spent on what for, RPA 1, RPA 2, whatever. City goes through those receipts, through those spreadsheets, determine what is reimbursable through the redevelopment agreement itself. That's what we're negotiating now to see what is reimbursable. So once city staff, that's finance, my office, Dr. Haskin's office, legal, will say this is reimbursable, then finance goes through with the taxi side and it gets reimbursed to the developers. So there is steps in between, not just giving a check to the developers. The work has to be done, and it all depends on the redevelopment agreement, which we are still working on.
And can I just make sure we clarify that check is given to the developer after as a reimbursement for what they spend on the project?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's an important distinction that the public is
Yes.
asking about.
We're working on several TIFs right now that have been completed, River and Rails, Scout Hall. They have submitted all their documentation regarding that, and now finance and accounting is working on the reimbursable costs of those projects.
Okay, and so is the CID then?
CID
Different?
is done at the CID director level at the businesses themselves. That's a tax that is imposed by the CID board itself, and it goes to the developers that is paid by the citizens. Like if I want to shop at a certain store in Cape, St. Louis, a lot of venues use the CID to impose a tax on themselves to help develop a property. That is chosen by an individual that goes to those properties to purchase the shirt, the pants, home goods, or whatever you wish.
Mm-hmm.
And that then goes to them to pay off what they input into the development.
Okay, but so same point, same
Yes, they
clarification
have
there.
to
They
do
are
the work.
reimbursing for specific costs that they've made, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
so they will submit their costs to the cities, not just like in Cape, but all over. They'll submit their reimbursable costs to the city, and the city will look through to make sure that it met the redevelopment agreement, and they're reimbursed.
Okay. I guess I'm trying to point out there, I think there are two large concerns that people bring up in the public, and that is well, as expressed tonight, this is money that's just going to go to pad the pockets of developers, but these specific tax incentives are used to reimburse for specific costs in the development.
Yes,
That's-
ma'am.
okay.
That's part of the redevelopment agreement itself.
Thank you. Yes.
Just for clarification, we had a gentleman step forward and state that the mall did not qualify as a blighted area. Could you identify what qualifies as a blighted area?
Okay, on a lot of projects that we deal with, we have TIF districts inside the city limits that have been determined to be a district. Certain projects, certain places are not in TIF districts, so then they have to obtain their own blight study, which the developers did. They obtained a blight study by a reputable firm, which provided the study to the city, which then was provided to the TIF commission. The property was determined to be blighted, which is just one process in this development. So it was determined to be blighted by the study. TIF commission thought it was, they approved it, which then moves toward the council itself to see if they will accept that.
Council, any other questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you,
Mr.
ma'am.
Hanson, is there any wrap up or any things you'd like to address?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think a couple of key themes. We understand that the financing that's being proposed for the project has some complexity to it. There are multiple tools. We're only talking about the CID tonight, but the overall financing package is composed of multiple tools, and that can be confusing. And it distresses me when I hear misinformation that it sounds like is out there in the media or out there in the community. For example, someone made the comment that the incentives being provided to the mall were somehow going to drain the resources of the city and redivert money that's being spent in certain ways to redevelop the mall. And that just is an example of something that's not true. The project is actually securing the base taxes, the base property and sales taxes, and freezing them at the level that they're at today. So over the last several years, there have been a substantial decline. And without reinvestment, we would expect that decline to continue. We're actually freezing that decline and ensuring that revenues continue to the city to be used for all your purposes, whether that be for any uses that the city budget is used for. And only if we're successful in redeveloping the project and it gets assessed at a higher level and we produce more taxable sales, only at that point is money generated to reimburse either us directly or reimburse bondholders who are advancing funds for the project. So there is no situation where the city is going to be in a worse fiscal situation because of the approval for this project. And it distresses me that there might be a notion out there in the public that that's not the case. So that's one thing to clarify. The other was with respect to any risk to the city associated with the bonds. We are asking that bonds be issued by the county IDA for the project, but the risk that the bonds aren't paid will solely be borne by the bondholders themselves. They will evaluate. They're going to be sophisticated institutional investors, more than likely purchasing these bonds. They will be able to look at the City of Cape, look at our plans for the project, and make their own estimate of whether the risk associated with upfronting the money in the form of bonds to help us pay for the project is a risk they want to take or not. If the revenues are insufficient to pay either their interest or principal, that is not a risk that will ever fall on the city. And I know your legal financial advisors will ensure that's the case. And that is not part of our request that the city hold any risk with respect to those bonds. I do have knowledge of one of the projects that was mentioned, the Independence, Missouri project, Bass Pro project. In that situation, the city did take annual appropriation risk on with respect to those bonds. That project was coming out of the ground during the recession, And it was a choice that the City of Independence made, whether they wanted the project in a very difficult economic time. But in order to get the project, they had to put annual appropriation backing behind those bonds, meaning if revenues were insufficient, the city was required to write a check to make up the difference. We are not proposing that in any form or fashion for the bonds with respect to this project. Bondholders alone will bear the risk. So those are two things, Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to step back up. But those are two major things that I noted that I wanted to make sure were clarified for the record.
Thank you. Yes.
Just a couple of questions, because we're gonna have time to ask some more questions when we have our regular council meetings.
Mhm.
So when you all bought the building 2 years ago, what was your initial intent for the purchase of the building? And second, the challenges that you have that are in place that you're sharing with us that you need support for the city, did you know those challenges were at the time that you purchased the building?
So I'll take a shot, and then if other members of the ownership team would like to come up to elaborate, I'd welcome them to come up. Certainly, when the project was purchased, it was known that it needed to go in a different direction. That's part of the reason why we purchased it. We knew it was so important to the community that this thing has gone in the wrong direction. It's been subject to a lack of capital reinvestment, and that's why it's not what it could be. But the process of knowing exactly what it would take to redevelop the project is something that took extensive time. I've been involved in the project a little bit over a year, and our firm came in, evaluated the financial aspects of the project, what the vision, the highest and best use vision for the project was. And only then, and as we evaluated costs, looked at rents that tenants that were interested in having come to the mall would be willing to pay, and looking at that entire picture, did it come into focus what the request would need to take it to the highest and best use? And that's when we started sitting down with city leadership, elected officials earlier this year, going on over 6 months ago, talking about this is how it looks to us. We think the mall should be reinvested in and put on a path for several decades of successful repositioning and redevelopment. In order to do that requires an investment of over $100 million. And in order to attract capital to that project, this is the request we have, and it mirrors the request that's been before the TIF Commission and what have you. So did we know things needed to be done with the property and it needed a different trajectory? Yes, but it takes time to understand the strategic plan for what that looks like and the financial cost to deliver that strategic plan. And that took time. But as soon as we were ready to present that, we started meeting and started this process that we're now in.
Do you have any other projects comparable to the project that you want to do in South Cape, doing Cape?
Are you
Like any
directing
mall-
that question to the ownership or to myself as a public finance consultant?
Well, either or.
Mhm.
Have projects been done of this magnitude in other communities of this size that if we want to look up and research and see,
Yeah.
based off the things you're sharing, that this project can do for the city, what other information or data from other communities that could be based off from your experience and expertise?
Yeah. Every project is a bit unique. It's hard to have an exact apples to apples comparison with the exact same community, asset size, et cetera. But we certainly have worked on, so my firm, IRR Corporate and Public Finance, has been around since approximately the year 2000. So we're about 20 years old. And we have helped projects secure over $1 billion of incentives to help make special projects move forward, like the mall. One of our first projects was the Legends at the Speedway in Kansas City, Kansas. That was a transformational project, taking a rural community, a distressed community in Kansas City, and delivering what is now the top tourist destination in Kansas to the Speedway and the Legends area. We've worked on projects that size, which were billions of dollars. We've worked on projects that are just tens of millions of dollars and everything in between. We feel that with respect to this project, the construction costs that we face, the interest rates that we face, that we've demonstrated within the TIF plan, that but-for requirement, that but for this incentive, this project is not going to be redeveloped to its highest and best use. It's a good piece of real estate, but there are a lot of uses that if the incentives cannot be approved, if after we work to negotiate the redevelopment agreement and we just cannot come to terms, we'll have to pick a different trajectory and different use for the property that we would prefer not to. But we've looked at the return on the project, to your question, looked at comparable projects, looked at the available incentive tools that could be applied. We think this is a good balance of risk and reward for the city and for all the taxing jurisdictions. And that's how we came to the proposal that we are presenting before you today.
One last question, I always say that. It was emphasized on several occasions, there's many tenants that want to come to Cape Girardeau. What sets your plan apart from all the other entities that have came to Cape or brought businesses to Cape? That's one. And what percentage do you think are those tenants secured prior to the redevelopment of the mall? Like, do you have 40%, 50%, may not ask for names, 60 or 70% say, if this is taken care of, these businesses going to come that way? And what is different than what you all would do than using other developers or other opportunities in the city?
I'll ask ownership to take the first part of your question, but the second part, which is what percentage commitment and lease will we be at various phases of the project? We anticipate the project, it's cut up into 6 different redevelopment project areas. And so we expect the project to be redeveloped in a phased approach. It's very hard to come in and completely redo 500,000 square feet, just like that, and bring all those commitments together and perform all that work, bring all that financing together. So what we're doing is starting with the Macy's wing as redevelopment project area 1. That's the portion of the project that Lucas was referring to, that we have more interest than we have square footage. The redevelopment agreement is still under negotiation, but the verbiage that we're suggesting in the redevelopment agreement is that substantially all of the space that is underwritten with respect to the first phase of the bonds would be committed to the project. And we anticipate, as we move forward and work sequentially through the project, we would anticipate that to be the case as well, that before we take our next step with financing, whether that be the bond financing or private financing coming together, that we'll be securing substantial commitments or substantially all of the commitments in that phase before we go to finance it. That's our plan. With respect to your question about why is our vision for the project different than others in the community, I might ask another member of the ownership team.
Without the city's commitment at this time? Or is it step-by-step phase? We just kind of went through this with Broadway Theater, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Is that how that worked with you all in the 6 phases, or just depending on the support you have to the city to see if you go for phase 1, phase 2, phase 3?
We won't be able to even implement phase 1 without the approval that we're seeking today. But with respect to your question, we will sequentially secure the private capital and the public capital through bond issues as we go through the project. Thank you for your questions.
Just to touch on what makes our project different, why tenants want to be there. So with large national retailers, obviously you have to have the space for them. We're talking 20,000 square foot retail stores. You have to have the storage area, the loading docks. You have to have the parking area where trucks can get in and out for loading. And then you also have to have the public parking area. And a lot of these places generally, they don't want to be in a standalone store. They want several other stores where it's a traffic hub where people are coming and going. So quite frankly, there's just not another area that has a visible, great location close to the interstate in Cape that can put together this lineup and this row of attractive retailers that again offers the parking, the access, visibility, and those are kind of the primary features of what the mall property offers, what it intended to offer to begin with, and what it offers now with what it will offer with exterior entrances. So that's, a combination of those factors is why the property is unique compared to anything else that, there's not another option in Cape, to do that. And then I would just address one or two other points on your questions from earlier. Alternate uses for the property, right? The auction process for when we bought it, I think from the day it was announced until the actual auction happened was maybe 60 days. And so we had no idea that it was coming up for sale until the general public knew. And so to be able to put together a full redevelopment plan and know exactly what we were going to do within that 60-day period just wasn't feasible. In addition to getting up to speed on, there's 60+ tenants on the property, how much money they're paying, how long do their leases last, what are the financing options, just doing the due diligence part of that took every bit of the 60 days that we had. So I would be wrong to say that we had a concrete plan on day one of exactly what was going to happen with the property. We did not, to be perfectly honest. But we quickly set about to say, what are the options? And, you can think through a couple different options for a property of that size. But the primary part of looking at that is we hired Pace Properties and they said, we have retailers that want to be in Cape and they will come to this property if you can make a redevelopment happen. And so as soon as we knew that, we started walking down that road. And then we look at, okay, well, if we bring in retailers, that brings in jobs that generate sales tax revenue and property tax revenue. Another option of looking at a multifamily or looking at, self-storage units and all these other kind of things that are obvious options that you could do there don't generate any of those benefits for the community. And so it's a combination of who already wants to be here and what do we have interest for, and what are the largest impacts that we can make for the property and for the rest of the community. And that's how we came to the plan that we have now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? All right, then. At this point, I will close the public hearing and ask council, is there a motion to adjourn and move into closed session? I have to read through the whole thing. Oh, yeah. Closed session to discuss issues listed in revised statutes of Missouri, section 610.021, including but not limited to legal actions, causes of legal action or litigation, leasing, purchasing, or sale of real estate, hiring, firing, disciplining, personnel issues, or confidential or privileged communications with its attorneys. So moved, Mr. Bliss.
Second.
Mr. Thomas, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of moving into closed session then, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, we are now in closed session. Thank you all for attending, for your time tonight.